This episode was brought to you by Manscaped.
Initiating moisture.
Welcome to the Moist Meter. Today we're taking a look at The Last of Us 2. The first Last of Us is one of my favorite stories in all of gaming, and I did not want to see a sequel. The first game wrapped itself up absolutely beautifully with an extremely powerful narrative, and I did not think Naughty Dog could do anything even close to that level again in the same universe. And they didn't, and somehow this was even more disappointing than I was expecting. Now let me just say right now, my disappointment with this game doesn't come from the fact that Joel's not the lead. I have no problem with Ellie being the lead. I have no problem with Ellie being in love with another girl in the game. I need to say that because the internet has already come to this conclusion where if you don't like The Last of Us 2, it's only because you hate women, or you're a homophobe, or you can't stand the fact that men aren't the leads in the game. None of that has anything to do with my disappointment of this game. I wouldn't give a shit if every single character in this game was a woman and you don't even see a man. I wouldn't give a fuck if every single character in this game was an anthropomorphic furry smurf. As long as it told an incredible narrative up to the same level of quality you would expect from the Last of Us universe, to the same level The Last of Us was able to deliver, at least something on par with that. That's not the case here. The storytelling and narrative in this game is absolute dog shit. It is. I'm sorry to say that. It fucking hurts me to say that because of how much I loved the first Last of Us, but this is a very big decline. In a nutshell, the entire story is revenge is bad. And they just keep hammering that theme home for the entire 25 hours. Revenge is bad. Revenge fucking sucks. Revenge has all of these far-reaching consequences. Everyone's getting hurt around you because of revenge. Don't fight fire with fire. Revenge with revenge. It's terrible. You know, you better close your windows at night because you're letting the revenge in. Hey, honey, I'm making dinner. Do you want a nice plate of revenge? Oh, shit, we're gonna need 2 body bags here. It looks like these 2 people got revenged. It's just the same fucking thing beaten to death. Revenge is bad. It's a generic idea, a fucking story you've seen a million times. And if this game was not called The Last of Us 2, if this was a standalone IP, I don't think it would be nearly as bad. You know, it'd be much more forgivable. But the fact that it's following up something as unique and beautiful as Last of Us narrative with a generic revenge plot, it's laughable and lazy. It seems like a soulless cash grab off the goodwill of The Last of Us. It feels like something they came up with at last minute, not something they had planned from the start or even thought about deeply. And when you compare this game to the first one, which I don't typically like to do, but it's hard not to since this is supposed to be the sequel to a beloved narrative, the first game, it has so much emotion in it that Last of Us 2 doesn't even bother to try and capture. From the very get-go of Last of Us, it punches you right in your fucking nutsack. You have this man who just loses his daughter in a horrific way. The light of his life is taken away from him. He becomes jaded. He's barely even a fucking human being anymore. He's not even whole. But then he's given this second chance with Ellie. And throughout this entire campaign, this long campaign, you see these characters growing with one another. They become so close, inseparable. She finally finds a daughter again. He finds a reason to live. And then at the end of the game, you know, they've traveled across the entire country to try and save the world because she's so special, she's immune. They can make a cure out of her only to learn that it would kill her. So then he has this tragic decision to make. Does he lose the one thing that he cares about in the world, the thing he was just given a second chance with? Or does he just take her and condemn the world to not having a cure? While the cure wasn't guaranteed, it's still an extremely tough decision to make that had crazy consequences as a result. There was so much emotion in that. And in this wet fart of a game, there's nothing even close to that because characters will die and you don't even remember their names. And I'm not talking about just like throwaway characters. I'm talking about some of the main characters. They'll just get killed in a pathetic way and you don't even know who they were or what they did. And it's hard to talk about this without getting into spoilers, but almost every character death is immediately forgotten by the entire cast. And it's hard to talk about this without bringing up spoilers, so I'm just going to give you fair warning. I'm going to bring in some spoilers right now, so if you don't want to be spoiled, just skip this part. But it's important that I use this to talk about my point so people understand where I'm coming from. The characters in this game get introduced and forgotten. There's no background, there's no development, there's nothing. They stay the same throughout the entire game, and you barely see them, by the way. And I'm talking major characters, not throwaways. For example, Jesse. Jesse's a character you meet early on. He impregnates Dina. Dina is the main love interest of Ellie. Dina herself has no real character about her other than the fact she makes jokes sometimes, but that's about it. You don't really get to see too much of Dina and really care for Dina because she just doesn't have much of a role to play, and even less for Jesse. Jesse impregnates her. Jesse's even a hero at one point, but in total, Jesse has about 6 scenes in the entire game. and then Jesse gets killed. He gets shot by Abby as he comes out of a door, and is never mentioned again. Not by Dina, not by anyone. He just gets shot and it's like he never existed. It's like that bullet fucking erased him from the universe's memory. It's the same for every other major character. There's a character named Manny he's in the game for a little bit. You know, he's there quite a bit. And, you know, and the only thing you know about Manny is he loves his dog and he says pendejo a lot. And then Manny gets shot in the face right in front of Abby, and Abby just leaves, just jumps over some cover and then leaves. She never mentions Manny again. She doesn't even seem bothered by Manny's death, and Manny is totally forgotten. All of these new characters they introduce have no fucking development at all, or personality, or anything about them. They're just bland, flat characters, except for two. There's only two characters in this entire game I felt were actually decently written characters that were interesting. I'm talking Yara and Lev, two kids that come from a cult, and it has a lot of shit going on there, and they actually are interesting characters that play a pretty big role, and I think they were definitely the highlights of the new cast, the only ones they seemed to even tried with. Abby, I think, could have been a good villain and a good character if they had known how to build her. She stays this cartoonishly evil, mysterious villain for like 9 hours of the game, and then they give you like 12 hours to spend with her, all through like flashbacks. You play flashback with flashbacks inside of a flashback. It really just feels like the whole game was out of order. They had decent events, like they actually had well-written events in their flashbacks. I think their flashbacks were actually the highlights of the game. The time you spend with Joel in the flashback, Abby's flashbacks, I actually think those were well-written and enjoyable to experience. But it's like they didn't know where to put them in the game. It's like the game was just so rushed that they just randomly edited these things in. If they had actually ordered these things in a cohesive manner where you start the game with Ellie and Joel, you know, spending time together and growing, and then you go in to Joel's tragic demise at the hands of a fucking golf club, which is a really pathetic death, by the way, but Joel needed to die. I think Last of Us 2, he needed to die. There needed to be consequences for what he did at the Firefly base, so I think that decision was right, but executed like absolute fucking diarrhea. Literal fucking fungal diarrhea. It was terribly executed, and it just felt so random because for the first 2 hours of the game, Joel's not even there. He's just in the background. The only time you even hear Joel talked about or seen is when Ellie's like, yeah, I fucking hate Joel. I'm tired of Joel. I hate him. And then Joel gets killed, and Ellie's like, well, now I want revenge. It just feels out of order. If they had taken those flashbacks with Ellie and Joel and put them leading up to his death, that would have had so much more of an emotional impact. It would have been significantly better. And then right after Joel's death, if you immediately went into Abby and her backstory, you would humanize her and all the people around her that you're about to go revenge to death, and you'd have real attachment to those characters in that setting. But instead, you have everything so fucking mishmashed all over the place, it'll have you brutally murder some random person, and then 6 hours later, it'll give you a flashback of who that person was and why you should feel guilty for what you did. But by that point, you've already fucking forgotten about that because that character had no weight at the time. It just feels so poorly put together. I have no other words for it. It just feels so goddamn lazy. It's like the homework was rushed, so they started placing paragraphs all over the place, and by the end, you have some nonsensical mishmash of fucking garbage. And I think it could have been great, because like I said, those flashbacks are the only parts in the game that are well written. Outside of that, you have some stinky fucking dialogue that doesn't feel natural like the first game did. It's just not good. The narrative, everything about the storytelling, I didn't like at all. I liked a lot of the ideas and a lot of the places I think it wanted to go, but it just didn't do it well. It couldn't do it well with the way they had everything set up. It just, you know, no one likes going through a ton of flashbacks all out of order, and especially when it's talking about things that happened 9 hours before. You know, there's a fucking talk about a bar fight and a bar scene at the beginning of the game, and you don't get to see what that was actually about until 17 hours later. And by that point, you're like, who the fuck cares about those people at the fucking bar? We're way past that. It's just very frustrating. Very fucking frustrating, and it's hard to believe that this is the story they wanted to tell after the first Last of Us. After that beautiful narrative, it's hard to believe this is what they came back with. But now that I've gotten all that out of the way, there are two areas I think Last of Us 2 improves on over the first Last of Us. The first one's an obvious one, visually. I think visually this game is probably one of the best I've seen in a long time. It is absolutely gorgeous. The atmosphere is stunning. Absolutely beautiful, breathtaking. It has you going through some incredible environments, and I think it is just absolutely gorgeous, 100%. And I also think the soundtrack, the score to this game, wonderful as well. Really was vibing with the sound in this game. I think they absolutely crushed it there. As far as gameplay goes, it's the exact same gameplay from fucking 7 years ago. It's the exact same gameplay from the first Last of Us. There's no tweaks, there's no improvements. It is exactly the goddamn same for the most part, with almost nothing new added to it. So, I mean, it's serviceable. There's nothing wrong with it. Over the course of the campaign, it gets extremely tedious, I'll say. But again, the gameplay is fine. The gameplay is absolutely fine. I wish there was a little more innovation. I don't think it was necessary since, you know, it's not broke. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But I would have liked to see them explore a couple more ideas here, or maybe just anything new when it came to actual combat, and they didn't. So I was a little let down there, but it's not like a big deal that they kept the exact same formula when it came to combat. I understand, and that's not really something I can hold against them. I also do really like a lot of the sections where you're running away in a panic away from either the infected or some evil people. They'll have you run through these really chaotic environments with so much shit going on, and I always just love those scenes. I think Naughty Dog does a great job of these cinematic set pieces that have you doing some crazy shit, and I also do like a lot of the battles that they force upon you when it comes to like a scripted encounter with something. I think they do a good job of setting all that up. But there are 2 boss battles in this fight, and both boss battles have the exact same moveset. I mean, 2 like actual boss battles where, you know, you actually have to fight and it's not just one shot and it's done. There's 2 boss battles where it's basically hand-to-hand combat, and they have the exact same moveset, which I found super lazy. Like, you only have 2 boss battles, you couldn't at least mixed it up. They have the same fucking weapon and use the same fucking moves. Like, I would have liked to see at least some kind of difference in how you fight the bosses, but I mean, it's not a huge deal. It's just something that kind of bugged me about it. But yeah, I would never consider this a bad game or like some terrible game. And if this wasn't The Last of Us 2, I think it would have been a fine game. I think it would have been much better than it is. But I mean, this is The Last of Us 2. There's a certain expectation that you have to deliver on here, and I think it very much falls flat on that. And that expectation is telling a really powerful and unique, thought-provoking story. This doesn't do that, and it doesn't even feel like it tries to. This is a generic revenge bad, revenge super bad, and revenge still bad plot, with no attempts to make it anything more than that. And it doesn't even have the decency to surround itself with characters that they care about, the writers care about, because these characters, like I said, have no character development. They have nothing about them. There's no info about these characters, and they're just killed off, thrown away, forgotten. They don't even really seem to serve a purpose. They just seem to be here for the sake of cannon fodder. Like, it feels like they're only there to be like, hey, look, revenge made you kill this person. You remember this person you killed 6 hours ago? Well, this person actually was kind of a good person. And did you know they were pregnant? That's another thing. I want to bring that up. This fucking game pulls the they're pregnant card 3 separate times. 3 separate times the she's pregnant or a surprise pregnancy reveals something. He did it 3 times. It feels like Neil Druckmann here just totally forgot how to make a character emotional or have you care about a character. So he just went with the shock of, wow, you just killed a mother. You just killed a baby too. Can you believe that? I bet you can see how bad revenge is now, huh? I bet you feel like shit now, huh? Because revenge is bad. Look what you just did. That was a pregnant lady. He does it 3 times, 3 separate pregnancies. And the writing, again, is so fucking dumb. There's a character in the game who is pregnant, and then she decides she wants to go to the front lines. Like, they told her, hey, look, you should stay inside. And she's fucking 8 months pregnant. She's literally about to give birth. And she's like, no, actually, I want to go to the front lines. So she goes to the front lines, gets in 3 car accidents, literally gets into a Molotov cocktail exchange fight, fucking Molotov cocktail party, and then getting shot at, shooting at people, on diving, fucking dolphin diving, fucking belly first, all while pregnant. It's hard to care about characters where it seems like the writers don't even care about them, making stupid shit like that, decisions like that. And then again, I can't fucking stop talking about how bad the story and writing is. Fuck. They also use the animal card a lot. Again, that's another thing I see from developers that don't know how to make anything emotional about a character, so then they put an animal in the situation to elicit that emotion, because it's obviously a lot harder to do something bad to an animal, even in a video game. So to have that be an element shows like, wow, look how evil revenge is. You just killed an animal. Or look how good this person is because they just love an animal. You just played fetch with a dog that you killed. It just feels so damn fucking stupid. It feels like it was written by actual amateurs, like as their first game. It feels like an indie game's writing where they're just now learning how to make something emotional and trying to figure it out. But they had already accomplished this in the first Last of Us. They had a ton of good shit going on in that game. You felt attached to the characters. In this game, you don't even remember their names. It just, I can go on, but this game was just extremely disappointing. Plugging The Last of Us 2 into the moist meter, I'm giving The Last of Us 2 a 55%. Again, it's not a bad game, and really the main negative about this is its narrative. Its narrative is truly fucking terrible, and again, I got really bored with the gameplay. I'll admit it. I got so fucking bored with the gameplay. Every single encounter plays out the exact same. By the time you reach in-game, you're just playing it the exact same way you played in the first fucking stage of the first hour, you know? There's no development of the gameplay, and it got so boring for me to keep doing the exact same strategies, fighting the exact same way with only a couple of guns to choose from and only a couple ways of approaching a fight or stealthing through it and grabbing. It just got tedious. It's not a bad game, which is why it's not below 50%. It's an above average game. There is a lot of quality here when it comes to its visuals and a lot of its art direction, and obviously its acting is second to none. But it is so incredibly disappointing as a follow-up to the first Last of Us. It truly is. Manscaped. Talked about it numerous times now. You know I'm a big fan of their male grooming instruments. The finest technology my ballsack has ever seen. I've also mentioned their Weed Whacker, which is primarily used for ear and nose hair. I don't have too much ear and nose hair going on. I do get some, stray pubic hairs coming out of the nose every now and then. So the Weed Whacker is great at cleaning those up. And I used it in my ear just for the sake of experimenting with it and seeing how that feels. My ear has probably never been more clean and smooth, so I can't recommend it enough. Even just experimenting for fun, it was enjoyable to use Manscaped products. It's just something special about them. So I highly recommend Manscaped for all male grooming, not just the pubic region, but also just, general cleanliness for the man out there. So if you're interested in trying Manscaped products like the Weed Whacker as well as all their other male grooming devices, you can use code MOIST20 at manscaped.com to get 20% off plus free shipping on your order. That's code MOIST20 at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. That's it. See ya.